So the format here is very open, willing to answer any questions that you have. But the short end of a long story here is Saber Astronautics. We've got this program. It's an astronaut program. This is a program overview. It's going to talk about a little bit about Saber's history and why we're doing an astronaut program, which some people asked us about. It's then going to talk about the relationship we have with Axiom and what we're looking for in terms of the types of projects and programs. And this isn't the only time we're going to be presenting this as well. This is going to be a program which is building over the course of the next 2 years. So what you're seeing is the beginning of a story, not the end of the story. Okay. That's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about why we're doing this. We're going to talk about the relationship with Axiom, the types of projects we're looking for that we want flown on this. We're going to talk also about the format for the application for the program. Then we'll have one last slide where we're going to give you a chance to hear about the astronauts side of it as well. I've had a lot of emails from people saying, hey, this sounds exciting. How do I be an astronaut? Clearly, that's not the main focus of what we're talking about here today. And once we get through the presentation, you'll understand why. The focus is on finding the right projects to fly and building a program around that. But let's go ahead and talk into this and just get started into this. First, just a bit about Saber Astronautics. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to work with before, we're a company that's been around for about 15 years. We're actually two companies, Saber Australia, Saber USA, we consider them sister companies. But what we do is we do mission operations as a service, and we do flight software, and we do a lot of research and development around mission operations and flight software. So you can see some of the things we've done in the past. Obviously, in Australia, we won the Mission Control Center grant for the Australian Space Agency. So if you want to see our Mission Control Center, just walk into Lot 14. You can check it out yourself. But it's a commercial operations center supporting flights from the humble CubeSat up to 2 tons. On our U.S. side, we do a lot of work with U.S. Space Force and getting products onto the high side up there is part of what we do. I'm not going to talk about that too much. But the Mission Control Center grant and the RSOC and that program leverages a long heritage of flight. And we've got a bit of an avant-garde spirit at Saber. Our motivation, democratization of space, and making space available for anyone to be a part of this industry that we love. And we've spent a lot of time, especially in our earlier days, building up a capability in human spaceflight. Saber Astronautics, but the astro part of it implies a human spaceflight aspect as well. We built out an experience in mission operations for human spaceflight, which was actually part of the initial proposal we sent to the Australian Space Agency. Was we're not just going to do mission operations part of this mission control center. We're also going to build the conditions and set the conditions so that you can fly astronauts out of the RSOC as well, and anybody can watch us do it, and we can have people in the ops floor able to do it. But we built out thousands of different parabolas and many hours of flight time and parabolic flight, and looking at human space flight. And we've done a lot of work in our earlier days in doing mission operations for analog space groups, like you see the Mars Society do these things. And these can be very much, it's all the whole scale of scientific fidelity. It could be very low fidelity, it could be very high fidelity, depending on the effort you put in. But we put in a lot of effort because this is the direction we wanted to go. That kind of ties into kind of our whole motivation here. Democratization of space means anyone can be a part of this industry. And from a human spaceflight aspect, what that really means is taking the astronaut programs, which are normally kind of very geared towards a very nationalistic place, and making it something that anyone can be a part of. So when we signed a deal with Axiom, what we were looking at was say, hey, we could send one individual up that spends a lot of money to go into space, or we could put together this whole program and let's do it with you to allow a broader kind of use case. So our motivation, part of the way we're framing this program, leverages this whole idea that anyone can start and build flight products from the humble CubeSat all the way up to something, on-orbit manufacturing, and we'll look at those different types of products that we think can fly later. But we also have an incubator called the Wolfpack Space Hub that we use to help out companies that are trying to convert from research into actual business. Not going to talk about this so much, but if you just think in terms of that whole kind of trio of different aspects to Saber, the flight operations and the astronaut attribute, and then trying to get everybody involved. What we're really trying to do is we're trying to broaden as much as we can the amount of innovation that's going into space. And by innovation, it means converting from research to business, and then back again, back into the research to constantly iterate and build better things. So that brings us to the program with Axiom. What happened there was we won the Mission Control Center grant about 2 years ago, and we got Axiom folks reached out to us, said, do you want to work together with us? And we're excited right away. But those of you who don't know what Axiom's doing, it's an exciting company because the International Space Station is going to be deorbited in 2030. They just got an extension to keep them alive a little longer. Space station's getting a bit old, so NASA say, well, there needs to be a program that not only is commercial, but helps to graduate to the next season of what we want to do next. And Axiom was chosen after a competitive down select, awarded about $350 million to replace the ISS with their own habitat modules, which they are manufacturing, but also to send up private and commercial astronauts. The first private astronaut mission has already gone up to the ISS and is so far quite successful, and they have a manifest of several flights a year, and a limited manifest, I got to say, which is important to know, with limited seats over the next couple of years. And so we signed an agreement with them allowing us to partner to build out this program here in Australia. Okay, so that's the short end of a long story. Now, our motivation, as we said, is to kind of broaden the industry out. So setting up this partnership with Axiom, we want to have, it's an expensive ticket that we need to raise money for. So what we said was we're going to set 3 big goals. We want the goal to be a purely Australian flight. The goal is for Australian industry to build products, to fly and build things that's revenue generating, and that's an important attribute of it. By the way, some feedback from the last talk I gave, quite a few members said, hey, look, be open to fundamental R&D. Absolutely 100% open to fundamental R&D as well. So I'm not closing any doors on anybody, but the end goal is to build things that can fly. But also to build an Australian astronaut program around that. And the idea is if we could generate enough projects together and get these projects into the sky, then that'll pay for the ticket, and then we will be able to do an astronaut selection that will be purely Australian. Finding an Australian out there that could spend 30 to 60 days on orbit is enough time to actually close the loop on making a product or a formula or some other attribute that can be leveraging the unique attributes of space. So that's what we're doing. Now, when we looked at this, we've uncovered a variety of different research areas that have been done on the ISS. And the ISS has several decades of experience now and heritage in doing fundamental R&D. And it is still in the early days of commercializing that R&D. But these are the different topic areas that we found were the most interesting to us. Now, as I talk through these areas, I want to caveat that with a statement that anybody on this call might look at this and say, no, but you know what, Jason, I have my own specific research area that I think would also fit within the attributes you're talking about. Using the microgravity environment gives the product some benefit that if you solve certain things, you can resell into markets here on Earth or markets in space. Okay, and there are products you're going to make in space on the ISS. You're looking at, on-orbit manufacturing and things like this, and there are products that you could make on Earth that will have benefits on Earth. For example, pharmaceuticals, microgravity environment. Reduced gravity means surface tension is the primary force that you're working with. You can make really good crystallization. So pharmaceuticals, silicon chips, quantum computing. Actually, pharmaceutical industry spend tens of millions of dollars on ISS research. They don't tell anybody what they're doing, so that's pretty exciting in that itself. I'm aware of some drugs that were manufactured on orbit, and the formulas were made on orbit. That's also quite interesting. 3D printing of organs sounds a bit macabre, but it solves other problems if you can make perfect structures in space that mirror things that we need that save human life. Low cost, high reliability satellite manufacture. I think for most people on this call, if there's a lot of space engineers on this call, you'll understand that right away. You can manufacture stuff without having to go through vibration testing and your thermal vac testing. You just stick it on the back porch, and there's your thermal cycling right there. But perfect fiber optics, silicon chips, which are 1,000 times faster than anything you can make on Earth. I could go on. The point is to use this to give you ideas within your own special industries. And by the way, my motivation for these talks is to get people outside the space industries getting into the same room as people that are currently in the space industry. So you're working together and coming up with your own products and designs with these things, right? So that's the purpose. Okay, so this is a two-stage program. And the two-stage program has 3 steps per page, okay? We're in phase 1 right now, which is a setting up phase, which is essentially trying to find the industry members that want to develop products to fly. And I use this phrase a lot. I use the phrase coalition of the willing, which I'm borrowing from the space operations community. And the idea is, working together on these projects, we're going to fill up manifests and have a community of projects which have value not just to government, but also to Axiom and also to each other. So working together on these manifests and working together to get these things flowing, I think is very important. But the first stage is engagement of the state governments, which we've been doing since the beginning of this year and the first quarter of this year. Engaging primarily with anybody who's willing to work with us. And so far, interest from New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, a little bit out of ACT. We're looking to increase the kind of interest from West Australia and Tasmania and Northern Territory. So if there's anyone from those states on this call that want to reach out to us afterwards, please do so, and we'll plug you in. We're starting the second phase now, which is a series of workshops. And the point of the workshops is to identify the projects and the products that you want to make. And I say projects, but also meaning research as well for those of you who want to do that. Also to start doing matchmaking and forming partnerships, because what we recognize is there's a lot of members of industry that might not understand the benefits and the science of the space environment. There's a lot of people who really understand the space environment well, but don't really know anybody outside of our little space circle to make these partnerships. I think there's a lot of opportunity there that we can build upon. But also, as part of we're doing in these workshops, are going to, and the proposal process as well is designed to narrow down what that first real Australian manifest is going to look like. That manifest is absolutely vital, not just to determining who gets to fly their first products and build products that we could use, but also what type of a person that we're going to select for that first astronaut. So all of you people are saying, Jason, what's the criteria that you would look for as that first astronaut? I have an idea what I think I'm looking for. I could talk about that later, but at the end of the day, the astronaut's going to be able to deal with these projects and manage these projects, right? So that's the second phase. When we get enough products in the door, that third phase is going to be a funding phase. That funding phase is in 2 directions. Mostly it's us working with the programs to help them get funding for their seed programs. All right. And And we'll talk through funding mechanisms. A lot of you, I think, are pretty well educated on where to find funding in Australia for your projects. I can say that there are two products since we had our first workshop that have received funding and reached out to us to help fly them on the ISS already. Uh, and as exciting as that is, I think there's going to be a lot more once we formalize this a little bit better. Okay. So that second phase, once we get enough products on the table, then we're going to put in funding commitments from the products and the teams and collectively do a down payment for that first seat with Axiom. And that's how it's going to work. Okay. Uh, and we have a fallback plan too, by the way. If there's half of the number of products, but not enough to quite make it, we got other mechanisms we could use to get that thing flowing. But that's really that stage 4. And we've scheduled it for 2023. It really depends on how far along we get. But we want 2023 to be that pre-flight stage, because in order to get everything done, making and aiming for that 2024 flight, we need to do that call and pre-training phase, which needs to happen with Axiom, by the way, well before that manifest is complete. Okay, so funding commitments, step 4. Development is you're developing your product to fit the safety standards that are set by NASA, which Axiom's following the NASA standards. Saber has to follow the Axiom standard. So it's all within that same kind of chain of requirements down the line. All that's going to be communicated to you during that phase 2. Okay. All right. So that's the objective. That's what we're aiming for in this first year. Is we're aiming for 30 flyable and fundable products. That's what we want. Okay. And obviously, it should be industry-led but academic engaged. Now, I'm going to stress here, you all know Saber is not the funding mechanism here, but we will help you and work with you to help you get that funding. But at the end of the day, what you're looking for are commercial projects. And what we did in our own business plan, we're saying, okay, $1 million to $5 million each. That is a rough thumb in the air that we think we need per product. Okay. That number is going to depend on the complexity of the projects and products and the research projects you want to fly. Okay. It's also a function of how massive it is, how much power it needs, how much data it needs, all these kind of technical requirements. And also how much astronaut time you need, because there's a cost there. And that's kind of, we're going to be working between your projects and the Axiom program to map that out. Okay. This is another important metric, 30 to 60 days on orbit. This is enough for most projects, in our opinion, and we'll test that, to actually do the work to see if the product can succeed or fail on orbit. Is there a business that could be is there a product that could be manufactured out of this which can be converted into a business, measuring the issues that you come around when you have to scale in volume, depending on your own business plans, things like this. Or if you're trying to do fundamental research, 30 days is plenty to get some really good data. If you're doing a biological experiment, as some of you have reached out and expressed interest for, then 60 days might actually be interesting. If you're trying to grow something and see, what life is some cycle of life is going on within that time frame. So that there you go. And the process at the bottom is the process for each project or product in your applications. This is the application process. And it's a select in process, I'll say that. We're going to fly everyone we could physically fly. That's our goal. If we could fit it on the manifest, it's going up, okay? You got a primary assessment. You got a secondary assessment. You got a proposal classification and disciplines review. You got a proposal readiness, which is like a flight readiness review, which is an analog to a flight readiness review. And then you're going to have a final selection, and people will be notified if they make it in. They'll be notified if they're on the backup. So if one of these projects gets a certain distance, isn't able to make it on this flight, then obviously we'll manifest the next one down the line. And if we'll still kind of, those who are almost ready, we can still kind of find other astronauts from other countries we can help you out with So trying to keep this as open and permissive as we possibly can. All right. Now, the assessment criteria, preliminary feasibility, again, it's a select-in process. So what we're looking at are really three different attributes that we want. We want to have products which require some sort of astronaut resources, okay? Require some interaction with an astronaut. That interaction can be very light. And the reason why we're putting this in there is because we want to separate this from well-established programs like NanoRacks, and there are plenty of rideshare programs out there for satellite prototype testing and things like that. Plenty of mechanisms for that are available, but not a lot of mechanisms are available for Australia where you're actually trying to make a widget that an astronaut needs to poke and prod and test, right? So that we're looking for things that actually require some of that in there. We're also need to check the financial stability of the proposer and the business plan around what you're trying to do. What we're looking to do is say, all right, is there some unobtainium in there? Honestly, if you've got unobtainium, if you've got a product which is really weird, but you've got the money for it, we're going to consider it because we're trying to get an astronaut flight there. And if there are plenty of seats and you're not a risk to anyone else, we're going to let you in, although we'll advise you where we think things will work and where they won't, right? If the manifest gets constrained, then obviously, we're going to have to constrain it a bit further. But we're going to provide feedback on the initial feasibility of the technology and what you're trying to do. So if you have some people that are trying to do manufacturing of quantum computing, we're going to look at that initial feasibility and say, okay, well, are you as a team, are you able to actually do this? Do you have have you shown some evidence that you could actually do this? We're also going to look at the question of, if you try and do what you're doing on Earth in space, what are the issues of trying to do that in space? And try and help you out along the way, okay? So the comment that I have on the bottom is a request that's going to go out over the next month or two, where we're looking for people within different specialty areas who want to join our assessment board and from the community of experts. We're looking for a pool of people that want to join a list, and some of these proposals come in. We can, we're not experts in everything at Saber Astronautics. We're experts at operations and flight and things like this. But if you have expertise, for example, in biology or human health and things like this, then we would want kind of that body of knowledge to be a part of. And also, we would want to invite you in and be a part of the program, Coalition of the Willing Style, and work with us on it, right? So that's the preliminary feasibility stage. And this is what we're trying to assess. We're trying to assess, again, feasibility, but we also really want to know the resources that you need in order to successfully get the results you're trying to do out of the flight. We want to know how much astronaut time. We want to know how much power, electric power, you need to power your object, and for how long. We need to know the volume and the mass of your device or devices, and any other kind of attributes that might require, say, human testing, testing on the astronaut, him or herself, themselves, or any other kind of attributes related to the research side or related to the product development side, okay? And at the last bit is, does it have a fundable future? Now, again, if you have the funding yourself to actually get this product on the ISS, great, but we would still kind of rank order on that if the manifest gets full, right? So at this stage, we understand what you as a community would want out of sending your object up to the ISS. And then we're going to go back to do a first internal evaluation, okay? And the internal evaluation is assessing the resource requirements that are available and comparing that with the transport manifest, right? So if we sum up all the resources in time and in electric power and in mass and volume, can we fit everything on that one flight? Or are there so many product requests that are putting down ready to fly that we need to actually rank order, okay? And likewise, assessing the resource requirements versus available, not just on the transport up to space on the SpaceX Dragon or whatever you're flying on, but once you're on the ISS, we're also looking at the astronaut time and scheduling that astronaut time, and that'll help us decide whether we need a 30-day or whether we need a 60-day flight. Okay, so our goal at the end is to take a look at what you as a community want, and then come back to Axiom and NASA and say, all right, here are the number of product slots that are actually available, and then we got to do a matching. And look, good news, if we got more people and more stuff to fly than we were expecting, then that's great news for everybody. If we have less, then we can make some decisions in terms of that secondary assessment and rank ordering based on the quality of the invention and how much that invention enhances or is improved through the space conditions. Okay, and we might do a down selection if we need to, coming back to the proposers to help them out, right? So we're going to keep that a bit flexible on that point. But the goal is really to rank order, also to give you some feedback and the products which we think have the best chance of success, and also the best possible enhancement to the industry, not just benefits to the industry, but if there's a product that has really good, no kidding, terrestrial benefit or financial future, then that's going to the top of the channel. Or if it's a type of research which is so fundamental that if you can answer this research question, we've got to have that to the top of the chain. Then we're going to refer to that internally as part of our rank ordering and assessment. Okay, and then that last bit, of course, technical feasibility. By the time we get to that second assessment, we will be working with you and watching you kind of grow your products and getting your own products ready for orbit and helping you out so you understand the standards that you need for flight. But we're also watching to see, can you actually get this thing into orbit? Okay. All right. So here's the timeline for everything as it stands today. And yes, my friends, the dates may change. Flight schedules, they change all the time. But also, this may change depending on the volume and kind of our own workloads as well. But this timeline is assuming that we get enough products ready for a first quarter 2024 flight. Okay, so that's that 2024 Axiom mission is what we're aiming for. So the call for proposals release was on the 4th. Today's the 19th. We're going to leave a Q&A open for the 19th of September. We've got an email address. You'll see the last slide that'll show you how to get there. With a closing date of the 30th. The call for proposals has the format we're asking for. We're going to brief it here a little bit so you get an idea. That primary assessment is going to happen by the 31st of October. So everybody's going to be notified if it's completely out of scope, if there's some big problems with what you're doing, it's going to be a very short email. If there's some problems that need to be fixed, then it's going to be something a little bit longer if we think that there's a future. And if you're in and should continue the next phase, we'll let you know that as well, and then we'll keep working together for that next phase assessment. Industry and expert review, 24th April of next year, right? So that secondary assessment in early March, and that April is going to be important, kind of going back and forth process, understanding the NASA standards, understanding the flight requirements a little bit better, so you have enough time over the year to get your product ready or your research ready to fly. Okay, and that final selection and notification if you make a backup list, if we need a backup list, is going to be there. Okay, so what else? All right, note at the bottom, you got to be an Australian entity. This is a hard stop. We are not inviting any other nations to be a part of the ownership of the flights. However, this includes Australian research centers. It includes non-for-profits, entrepreneurs, startups, larger commercial organizations. If you are an overseas company with a satellite company in Australia, I'm sorry, this isn't for you. However, I'm leaving a door open for you because collaborations can include international partners. So that means the Australian entity must lead this in order to propose, but you could have your larger companies from overseas or smaller companies from overseas or research partners, however you want to do. We are not going to judge at all. Again, coalition of the willing. We want to have as many as possible, but the leader has to be Australian. Okay. Now, next. Almost done, folks. Almost done. Hang in there. The format proposal supplementary info. This is a 10-page proposal for this first phase, for this first preliminary assessment. 10 pages. That's it. If you're past 10 pages, our staff have been instructed to close the application at 10 pages. We will evaluate those first 10 pages. Okay. Those 10 pages include, and there are these 1 pages here are maximum, of course, recommended. You can go a little bit more if you want. We're not fussed about that. We do have a few rules just to keep it real, like any other proposal. 10-point font at a minimum. Keep it real. I will recommend you write for clarity rather than try and shove all the research information into one proposal. Right? Write for clarity is my advice to you. But executive summary, project background and technical history, project goals, the technical description and how you see the flight going. Think in terms of those resources, like the astronaut time and how much you need. How you would want to mount things. I don't expect you to have all the answers in here, but you should have an idea at this phase of how you think it should go. And then your flight readiness. Thinking in terms of safety and timeline. If you've done some of this work already before, and your risk assessments would kind of go in there, but also where you are in the development of your product as well, and timeline to get to the point within this timeline. By the way, look at this, and that gives you a hint as to what your milestone should be. But how are you going to fit within that timeline to be ready by the time you have to actually manifest? Okay. And then your on-orbit manifest test plan or your high-level requirements, the actual flight, your own internal budget, and that flight cost, of course, is going to be negotiated between us. But we want an indicative, based on how much time and how much you're able to spend on that, and how much you need to spend on getting your product ready. Okay, we want to see what that is as well. Okay. Then the next is response to secondary assessment criteria. We'll say supplementary info does not count towards your 10 pages. We just want to do that because we know there's a lot of information you might want to send us. We want to see a quad chart, a 1-page quad chart. We want to see some proof of funding or evidence that your company would be able to afford, or your organization would be able to afford the program. Optionally, a list of references, academic references, if you need to justify some of the science. Sorry, it's a bit of typo, I should be number 4, but ethical certification requirements. If you're doing anything related to medical ethics, you already know how to get those certification requirements there. But other products or projects might have your own rules around that. Let us know what they are, also some of these requirements might also bleed into if you're working on any hardware. Look for anything which might have some outgassing. Look for anything which might have liquids or oils that can be spread or wicked accidentally because you're in a microgravity environment. Okay. So if your proposals are really, really good in every other way and we got room for you, we'll just tell you, hey, you made a mistake here, you need to check it out, and we'll probably help you get a reference. Like I said, coalition of the willing type of approach there. Okay, so that's that. The astronaut selection, like I said, when it's time to do an astronaut selection, once the products are understood, the manifest is understood, we get enough projects on the table, we'll make that national call. The attributes that we are looking for obviously has to be an Australian citizen or permanent resident. I might remove that permanent resident thing depending on what the community looks like, but we put that in there just because there's a lot of people who have been in the country a long time and in the space community, but primarily Australian citizens are the goal. But the selections can be based on merit, and the criteria for that is what we're looking for. We're looking for people who we can trust to manage the group of experiments that end up on our manifest. So the first thing is we're looking for a person that we can trust. So this person has to have attributes of ethical behavior and attributes of flight worthiness in the sense that you're not going to bump into things by accident or on purpose, but able to also be trusted with other people's products. So a good enough kind of well-rounded, able to handle the engineering or able to handle the science. Again, we're going to look at the technical attributes and capabilities there depending on the type of manifest we get. But from a big picture, this is a person who should be able to be good with their hands, able to handle the microgravity environment, able to handle the experiments, and also somebody that you would be willing to spend 30 to 60 days in orbit with, kind of a personality that you would trust in a room like that. So, of course, the training requirements are going to come from Axiom. It is their flight. And their requirements are very close to NASA's, by the way. So none of this should be a surprise to anybody who's done this in human space flight. All right, that is it. This is the last slide. I want you to remember this phrase, coalition of the willing. We are keeping this as open as possible, as easy as possible that we have. We're going to be very helpful as much as we can. Questions, if you have them, go to astronauts@saberastro.com. Feel free to put questions in the chat. What I'm going to do right now is I am going to end the screen share and open it up for questions. And I'll answer any questions you have. They could be embarrassing questions. They could be stupid questions. I don't care. For me, this is the fun bit. Here, I'll go this way. That way it's a little bit less clear. But go ahead. What do you want to know? Microphones are active. I'll put video screens active if you want to show your face. What do you want to know? Okay. First question from Akram Harani. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Question is, any possibility for exterior deployments, example, antennas? I would say the short answer is yes, of course. Again, the question is, can you do this with other rideshare providers like a Nanorex, etc.? Does this need astronaut time? We would, of course, look at your proposal doing something like this. If there's a need for a human being in the loop there, we would definitely investigate it. Okay, any other questions? Cindy Callender asks, is this open for proposals from international organizations? Again, the lead needs to be Australian. If you're an international person or international organization, you are absolutely encouraged to support an Australian entity and work with them to find out what type of a deal you want to set up with them. And it could be, this could be very interesting because we were thinking, what if there's an investor? What if you're an Australian SME or a startup and you got this really good project you put on that you want to go fly? An investor comes in, but then investors from Ireland or from Germany or Italy or who knows, from India. There's a lot of investment in space in India coming up these days. And we wanted to leave that open, right? So that's how we would do it. Jay Cuddy, how many crews are you looking for? Astronaut eligibility criteria. We are looking for one astronaut, and we will have one backup on reserve. What we're looking for at this point are products, because to be able to afford the ticket, we need about 30 products that need to fly. The eligibility, as I I just briefed that right away, and it was very vague on that, by the way. So if you got deeper questions about eligibility, just go on voice and ask me now. We can talk now in front of everybody. I'm okay with it. You might be shy, but that's cool. But the whole point is they have to be able to handle the products that we end up getting to fly. So let's say, for example, we get 10 products, 9 of which are biology products, 1 of which is a human spaceflight product, okay, or research programs. Well, we're going to be looking for someone with really good background in biology and knows how to do some pipetting and yeah, knows how to handle experiments within those areas. That's just kind of what I was saying.
Okay, so it's so it will be product driven rather than astronaut criteria driven. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying the astronaut criteria, this isn't too different from a mission specialist, is what I'm saying. Like when
Okay,
NASA
right.
looks
Oh,
at,
okay.
yeah, when NASA looks at a mission specialist, like if you're looking for a pilot, you know, the pilot positions, NASA will look at flight time, right? Like we're going to look primarily at your ability to handle the experiments, but other attributes are going to include, can you handle the microgravity environment? Which means we might have to send some people in zero G, right? And Saber does a zero G flight every 2 years through our other projects. We usually fly out of Cape Canaveral in Florida with suppliers there. But we could do one of those flights just to kind of get your hands on the Saber experiment. So we could see it. 10% of the human population is on the Garn scale. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a big fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, astronaut. For the rest of it, yeah, it's how much do you upchuck? You know, really high.
So are programs like the Possum program advantageous or?
Yes. Yes. I'd say so. I was, but it's again select in, right? So, you know, we're not saying if you haven't done it, and scuba and you know, time in an aircraft. These are soft attributes. The biggest attribute would be like if you ever look at there was an old website called Astronaut Hopefuls, if you've ever heard of this, and they had found, you know, one of the people. These are all people who are applying for NASA and didn't make it. You know, they grouped their intel together, kind of their own coalition of the willing. But they had the NASA point scale that they had found through a process, and we're kind of following that because there are really good guidelines there as well that I think we could adopt. But from the Australian perspective in this program, you know, academics are important, but in the context of being able to handle the projects. Your physical attributes are also important, the ability to handle physically the environment in microgravity. And third, your ability to work as a team is vital because this is a criteria for the astronaut. Even people with oodles of money that are going up, right? All the rich, wealthy people, they have to get assessed to see, all right, we can't take somebody who's got like skeletons in their closet or personality quirks that'll mess up the team. So that there's a whole process there.
So good CRM and NTS skills. And could you go again with the website that you just remembered? Was it NASA Hopeful or Astronaut Hopefuls?
I don't know if it's still up. I haven't looked in a while, but Astronaut Hopefuls. There was a naughty acronym because the astronaut. I won't get into that. Send me an email. I'll send you. The astronauts have a sense of humor around what they call themselves. Let's just say astronaut candidates are called AskHands. Astronaut hopefuls are called, well, you can figure the rest out yourself.
Fantastic. Thank you for your answers and your time. Grateful.
No dramas, no dramas. And thanks for the question. That's a really good question, by the way. Akram, any possibility for small CubeSat deployments? Of course. As before, there are nanoracks. There's Japan's got programs. Australia's got rideshare programs. I would point you to Kuava, who's got a program you could put money towards. It's going to be cheaper than an astronaut flight, by the way, going to Kuava by a significant amount, much cheaper for you. So if all you're looking for is a CubeSat deployment, go ahead, send it to one of these folks. If you want to have an astronaut fly it, there's an old video that we saw of a Russian cosmonaut throwing a CubeSat like it's a it's like it's a footy ball out, on a spacewalk. We could do something like that for fun, but it's, we'll leave it open for you if you want to propose it, and if we have room, then of course we'll send it up. But I would say it's probably for you. I think there are cheaper ways to do it. Another question about the funding source. The funding source has got to be from you. Okay, this is the whole point. Saber will help you, connect you with investors, through the Wolfpack program if that's what you want to do. We have helped two other programs get funding through. One program got funded very recently through a large government program because they were working with this. It kind of fit kind of a research bill. So I would say those are the funding source. Do not come to us asking Saber for money. Saber is doing it this way because we want all of us together to raise the money together. That's the plan. That's the coalition of the willing. We will help you find investors. We will help you on your proposals. We are aware that there are some government proposal programs that are coming up in the government's roadmaps that will be very supportive of your projects trying to fly in a program like this. And when I'm talking to them, I'm letting them know, the government folks know that what we're doing. So they see a pool of projects ready to go, all of our chances raise up. And that's the strategy, is by the association with the program, it gives you gravitas and it gives you a supply channel so you can fly. And that's really the point to raise the funding. And that's kind of how we got to that 30 projects. It was, all right, here's how much money we need to actually fly on the ISS through this Axiom program. We need a group of projects to fly together. And this is me being as transparent as possible can be, right? If we get to a certain number of projects, then bam, I light that candle, we get an Australian astronaut, okay? If we don't get those enough projects to do that, then we call Axiom and say, okay, we need other astronauts to fly Australian projects. That's what we're gonna go. All right, hope that was clear. Tom Mueller, not sure who that was, but a subreddit still exists, astronaut hopefuls. I'll look at that Reddit later, but I'm willing to bet it's the same people. I'm willing to bet it's the same people. A lot of good friends stuck together. It's been going on for a couple of decades. Saida, what kind of engagement support do you want to see from governments? Great question. I want the states, and some of the states are already doing this, first and foremost, promote amongst the community, not just from space people, but from core industries, advanced manufacturing, clean tech, pharmaceutical, all those silicon chip manufacturing, because we're making efforts in Australia to kind of catch up. All these kind of gap areas that we've decided to play in, all these businesses that are growing up that are not space companies, we want them in the tent. Okay, we want them to think of their own products and their own programs, their own research they need to do. Okay, we also would like the states to support us when we do these workshops in different states, formalize it, deputize us, allow us to come in under your tents as state leaders, because we want to see what state can produce the most products, because at some point, if this is successful, we're going to have to decide where the astronaut comes from and what state the work is done in. And since Saber has now got offices in several states already, this question's coming up. Where do you want to host this? So we want buy-in from the states, and we want collaboration with the states right away. Peter, okay, Peter's question has been asked and answered. Unfortunately, yeah, you got an answer.
I have a couple of questions that I've gotten in passing as I've been coming to the session that I'd like to ask on behalf of these people.
Okay.
The first is a question that some people may have thought of on the call related to technology transfer. And it's been asked, if you're an organization that has a smaller entity here with an international organization, does a technology transfer still fit? within the bill.
Mm.
If an organization was to
We have some pokers in the fire that we can trigger for that. That's an export compliance question as well. We have we're listed as an implementation partner. So Saber is an implementation partner for U.S. Space Force's Catalyst Campus program, which is based out of Colorado because we have offices in Colorado. But that is primarily around space domain awareness. So if you're a space domain awareness company, yeah, right away, yeah, come on board. We could set something like that up if you're looking to build out like a sales channel overseas. Austrade is a really good organization for that, and we've worked kind of in tandem. But again, Coalition of the Willing, we could sort out a channel like that with them. When we talk to U.S. Space Force is going more broadly than people would normally expect, well past software. They're building stuff. And NASA as well is starting to soften their stances on how to do that as well. NASA has cases, of course, and cases have been well established, primarily for research, but they're very open to commercial products as well. But they never formalized it as like a commercial thing. It was always formalized as kind of a broad research thing. So that's a great question, Andreas. Maybe we take that offline and kind of discuss what that looks like with some government people. Maybe that would be appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. I have two more really quickly. One was actually from the audience, and the question asked whether there would be EVA opportunities.
Oh boy, I'll ask Axiom. The EVAs are kind of dangerous things that kind of advance to a next level of risk. And actually a 30-day to 60-day. The 30-day barrier to entry from a human health standpoint is actually fairly straightforward. You don't need as much as you would think to get approved for that. To get a 60-day approval starts getting to that line where you know when people think of like a NASA flight physical and all the things you got to check on the human body, that 60-day adds quite a bit more risk there. I imagine the moment you're leaving a shirt sleeve environment, the risks go even higher. Another thing we will check on the side, let's add that to the FAQ, and we'll reach back to Axiom for their advice.
Awesome. And very quickly, last one from someone shy who messaged me instead of posting it in chat.
Of course.
Do the experiments that go up come down?
That is part of the price. You could have stuff going up and coming down for sure. You could have stuff coming up with data coming down, and we're working through that data piece with one of the clients that have signed up already. Each of these has a price point and a different set of requirements. The short answer is yes, you can have stuff coming down.
Awesome. That's all I had as a proxy for other people. So I will open it up to the rest of the participants.
Thanks, Andreas. All right. I think we have 67 people on the call. Give another minute or two to answer any more questions that you have. If there are no more questions in the next 2 minutes, we'll end the call and wish you a good day, and off we go to write your proposals. It's good fun. Kelly, if stuff goes up but not down, what are the debris mitigation standards? There is a part of the cost. Actually, no, that's an awesome question. So part of the cost is in debris removal. So you would not send stuff up to add to space debris at all if you're on the ISS. You would have a trash removal fee, which would go down on the next resupply. So that would be part of the cost for the flight mission. All right, I think we're getting to the end of it. Then any other questions, feel free to follow up. We'll happy to work with you offline. Thanks for your attention, and actually really excited to see so many people jump in. Like again, Coalition of the Willing. If you do want to send a proposal, now's the time to get it in. And that's it. Best of luck with everything, and have a great day.